Today we will be looking at Lomahaṃsa Jātaka, number 94. Lomahaṃsa Jātaka explains to us a lot about how asceticism, self-mortifying practices, are not only useless, but those who believe in these self-torturing practices are actually supposed to be born in a world of suffering after they die. So in this story, we learn about a monk who is called Sunakatta. And this Venerable Sunakatta, at one point, he lost trust in the Buddha. Why did he lose trust in the Buddha? Because as a monk, he received instruction to meditate and to achieve the psychic power of divine eye, also known as clairvoyance. Clairvoyance is a psychic power where you are able to see anything and everything you want, far or near, past or future. You're able to see all those things and they are right. So if you, for example, want to see what is your friend doing right now, or if you want to see what's happening on the moon or on Mars, or if you want to see what are gods doing in the heavens, or you want to see how does it look like in the hell. So that's the power that can allow it. And Sunakatta, the venerable monk Sunakatta, achieved this power through following the Buddha's instructions. And then he wanted to achieve the psychic power of divine ear. But the Buddha saw that Sunakatta doesn't have that power, that Sunakatta cannot achieve that power because Sunakatta doesn't have enough good karma from his past lives to achieve that psychic power. So the Buddha declined to teach divine ear to Sunakatta, and Sunakatta got the wrong impression. He thought that the Buddha doesn't teach divine ear because the Buddha has only as much power. And if Sunakatta achieves divine eye and divine ear also, divine ear here is the same like divine eye, but you can hear things. So you can hear what the gods are talking about in the heavens. You can hear what are your friends talking about far, far away. You can hear what is happening in the hells and in ghost realms and so on. So that's called divine ear. So Sunakatta believed that the Buddha doesn't want to teach him about divine ear because if Sunakatta achieves divine ear, then he will be just like the Buddha, and the Buddha didn't want that. So this was the theory of Sunakatta. Sunakatta thought that the Buddha would be jealous, and that's why he doesn't teach divine ear. But in fact, the truth is that the Buddha did not teach divine ear power to Sunakatta because Sunakatta was not able, he did not have enough kamma to achieve that power. And the Buddha will not teach things which don't work. So the Buddha knew that the practice to achieve divine ear would not work for Sunakatta, and therefore the Buddha rejected that. But Sunakatta misunderstood, and he thought the Buddha is jealous. And that's why Sunakatta moved to a different teacher, a teacher who taught asceticism, self-torture. By the time that the teacher of Sunakata, that the new teacher of Sunakata died, Sunakata came to the Buddha to return his robes and alms bowl. You can see it here. Sunakata is returning his alms bowl to the Buddha because he wants to practice as the student of his new teacher. But his new teacher by then died, and he was born as a Kalakanchika Peta, Kalakanchika Asura. We will see Kalakanchika Asura a little later. This is not exactly accurate picture. We will see more accurate picture later. So he was born as a ghost. The teacher, the new teacher of Sunakata, was already born as a ghost. Why was he born as a ghost? Because the teacher of Sunakata, whose name is Korakattiya, so Korakattiya was dead, and because he was practicing these self-torturing practices, he was born as a Kalakanchika Asura, as a ghost. Okay. And then Sunakata was angry. Sunakata was angry. His teacher passed away. And he started to talk bad things about the Buddha. So he went around in the city and he explained that the Buddha does not really teach the way to achieve enlightenment. So Sunakata explains the Buddha teaches only through logic and individual thought. That means whatever the Buddha was thinking about and logically realizing. But, and here we have some spelling errors, but in fact, the Buddha had 6 superpowers. We will look at them more in detail. Sunakata says the Buddha did not achieve enlightenment, but in fact, the Buddha did achieve enlightenment, and he had so-called 10 powers and 4 grounds of confidence. Again, we'll talk about that later. And Sunakata also believed that Dhamma, the Buddha's teachings, does not lead to enlightenment. But in fact, Dhamma does. Dhamma does teach to enlightenment. Let's look at it more in detail. This one is already from the sub-commentary. You will not read this in the commentary. You need those explanations. Oh, this is what I already told you. Yes. So Sunakata achieved a divine eye. He was able to see whatever he wants. He was not instructed to achieve divine ear. The Buddha rejected because Sunakata would not be able to achieve it anyway. And then Sunakata got angry, moved to a different teacher, and started to say bad things about the Buddha. Where did it happen? In Patikarama, in the monastery near Vesali. Sunakata was born at the time when astrological signs were appearing in the skies. You know, in Buddhism, we don't believe in astrology, but we do see sometimes the Buddha to be using astrology for some things, like you saw in a previous lecture where I explained that the Buddha to be checked whether his father, the king, has passed away, and then this was in the Deva-Dhamma Jātaka. So as we talked about the Deva-Dhamma Jātaka, we saw that the Buddha to be and his 2 brothers, they were in the forest. They rescued themselves from the great demon, from the ogre who liked to eat anyone who doesn't know what is a Deva-Dhamma. So if you don't know it, you'd better review our previous lecture. And then the Buddha to be looked into the sky and he saw his father died. And that was the moment when he was supposed to return to the kingdom, and he returned right on time. His father died, so all of the three could easily live in the palace. So we do see in our scriptures that sometimes the constellations or the arrangement of stars as they are visible in the sky is sometimes used, and it is useful. But sometimes it is not useful, like in the case of Sunakatta. Sunakatta was born at the time when constellations were auspicious, lucky stars. But unfortunately, Sunakatta was not that successful. Well, he was successful in the sense that he became the Buddha's disciple, but then there was a misunderstanding. Korakattiya was a noble by birth. He was born to people of noble caste, of noble, we could say, noble lineage. But unfortunately, he was very greedy for food, and therefore he was called Kora. So Kora here means exceedingly desirous of food. So that's the teacher of Sunakatta. Here we have the same, basically the same table before, but this one also tells us the idea that the Buddha's motivation maybe was to get more support from lay people, but instead the Buddha taught Dhamma in order to support people in their practice and gain merit. Let's see that now in more detail. Hammered out by reasoning, Takka Pariyahata. Sunakatta claimed that Dhamma was merely derived through logic, and that the Buddha followed Vimamsa, which means own logical investigation, his thought. But he did, therefore, admit that the Buddha was intelligent to think and to use logic. And also Sayang Patibhana. Sayang Patibhana means that the Buddha himself realized things based on what he believed, and he was also showing off how he looks like and his speaking skills, but instead, but in fact, the Buddha did not really realize anything. So this was Sunakatta's idea, and the subcommentary explains that actually Sunakatta's idea is not acceptable because the Buddha taught practices that are very clearly leading not only monks but also lay people towards the realization of the truth, towards enlightenment. For example, the Buddha taught meditation on repulsiveness of the body or foulness to counter lust. The Buddha taught loving kindness to counter hatred. And the Buddha taught mindfulness of breathing to counter discursive thought. Discursive thought means thinking about all kinds of things. The 5 doctrines of overcoming delusion. So these 5 doctrines are not explained either in the commentary or the subcommentary. Instead, we will find them in the commentary to Majjhima Nikaya's Sutta, Rahulovada Sutta. Rahulovada Sutta does not explain the 5 doctrines of overcoming delusion, but the commentary to the sutta explains it. And you will see that there are 5 doctrines that the Buddha taught for overcoming delusion. So here you saw there are 3 ways. Meditation on repulsiveness of the body is for lust. Loving kindness is for anger. Breathing is for discursive thought. Now, how about delusion? So for delusion, we apply 5 things. Number 1, good friendship. So we are supposed to associate with wise people. virtue and restraint. So we are supposed to apply rules, apply restraint. So we are not trying to look here and there, trying to search for sensual pleasures. We are supposed to listen to Dhamma, okay? And we are supposed to discuss Dhamma also. So Dhamma talk, discussing Dhamma is also very important for overcoming delusion. We arouse energy. In other words, we gradually develop the clear understanding of a problem in this world, and that may give us the energy to do something with ourselves. And finally, penetrative wisdom. So we gradually develop insight through vipassana meditation. We develop knowledge through listening and discussing Dhamma, and that way we develop penetrative wisdom. So these are 5 doctrines of overcoming delusion, as explained in the commentary to Rahulovada Sutta. Okay, so the Buddha then, as he is criticized by Sunakatta, the Buddha then explains to his disciples, to the monks, that in his past life he was already an ascetic. The Buddha was already an ascetic in a past life. Of course, he was an ascetic before he became a Buddha, but that apparently was not enough. The Buddha here talks about his past life when he was a really very, very strict ascetic. And he explains that the life of asceticism leads to rebirth in a world of suffering, namely as a Kalakanchika Peta, namely the ghosts who look like black gruel. The one who you see, the picture who you see here, I'd say is rather funny. Reminds me a little bit of some sci-fi movies. We will see Kalakanchika Peta precisely a little later. So for now, let's concentrate on the explanation. So the Buddha to be, so in a past life, the Buddha to be, he lived as an ascetic. As an ascetic, there were several things that he was doing. Depends on whether it was winter or whether it was summer. So if it was winter, he would stay under the snow. He was basically covering himself in snow. And when it was drizzling, when it was raining, and the snow was not clear, he would let the rain to fall on his body. So he would basically constantly suffer extreme cold. How did he survive that? That is not explained. But he was practicing very extreme self-torturing technique in terms of temperature. When it was summer, he would stay under the open. That means right under the sky, right during the most scorching heat of summer. And then in the evening, he would go to the thick forest where he would not be enjoying, therefore, any breeze of the evening. That's how he says it. That's how the Buddha actually says it, yes, in the commentary. And he would be living in a dread thicket. That means in a kind of forest of bushes that look very dangerous, that are dark, and he would be there even though the place was very scary. His diet, he lived basically eating refuses such as dung. Dung is poop. Poop is dung. It's the same word. So when we say dung, we are talking about poop. He was eating the poop of young milk-drinking calves. At that time, they believed that this poop contains some nutritive essence, so it helps the body to continue living, to survive. He was also eating small fish. That's what we read in the commentary. We don't see it here in the we don't see it here in the presentation, but in the commentary it's clearly written that he was eating small fish. And apparently dead small fish, because there's clear mention of refuses, but he did actually eat fish. Would have to be, was eating fish. But note that this is not the diet that's recommended to us, nor it is a diet recommended to monks. It is actually a diet of him as an ascetic during the time when he was doing it wrong. But it's true that the Buddha did not refuse eating meat or fish. We have in our commentaries clearly written that the Buddha was eating meat. It's very directly written. The Buddha was eating meat. It's clearly written that. And we know that he was observed by the Amagantha ascetic, an Amagantha ascetic who believed that eating meat is exactly the opposite to the way to enlightenment. Amagantha ascetic rebuked the Buddha for eating meat. So the Buddha then explained to Amagantha that actually what is the wrong thing is to tell lies, to kill, to be violent, not to eat meat. That's not what is violence. But of course, we don't eat meat from animals that were killed for us. If it is an animal that died by nature or that was killed by someone else or something else, then that actually is okay for us to eat meat. I personally don't eat meat because I feel it's not good for my health. Okay, then we have here the mention for the winter and summer. Yes, winter, nights in open air, days in dripping, frozen thicket. Summer, days in scorching sun, nights in windless, sweltering forest. Now let's look at how Kalakanchika Petas look like. So that's the consequence of this asceticism. So you may ask, so wait, so if the ascetics are born as ghosts, why are they ascetics? Why do they do this? Well, that's because they don't know. Well, they don't know that if they are ascetics and they die, they will be born as ghosts. Actually, the opposite. They believe that when they are ascetics like this and they work so hard and they suffer so much, they believe that they will be born in heaven, that they will have an eternal life in pleasure. That's why they're ascetics. They believe that they will be liberated. They will be freed from all birth, old age, illness, and death if they torture themselves. But unfortunately, they are wrong. And that's exactly what the Buddha here explains. You see, Sunakatta thinks that the ascetics are right. The Buddha says that the ascetics are wrong. And instead, for being ascetics, they become Kalakanchika Petas who look like black gruel. Gruel here is a soup. It's Indian soup. So their color, they look like Indian soup. And they are withered. They have very little flesh and very little blood. They look more like skeletons. Their eyes and their mouth are at the upper part of the head. Okay. This is a drawing of the Burmese people. This is right from Myanmar, from a Myanmar monastery, probably. I received this from a lady known as Snow. And this is a depiction of a Kalankanchika Peta, and we have one more. Let me see, I didn't get to add it here. Where do I have it? I see. So I'll have to find it. Just a moment. Okay, here we go. I think this picture is a little bit more accurate. But it doesn't get to add. So what am I going to do then? I see. So I hope you see it. Kalakanchika petas. They have a problem that they're hungry, so they're quite violent to each other. Kalakanchika petas. The explanation or the description is included in the subcommentary. And it says that their eyes look like needles on their head, and that they have their mouths on their head as well. This is again a painting from Myanmar. This one is in Bodhita town. If you know where is Bodhita town in Myanmar, it's close to Mandalay. And there I myself took the photo of the painting. So those are Kalakanchika Peta, and they're supposed, and so that's what ascetics are supposed to become when they die. Let's get back to our presentation. So now let's look at the Buddha. We'll be talking a little bit more about the Buddha. So the Buddha employed these techniques. We already talked about that, but we have here some interesting information about the Buddha's abilities, knowledge, and powers, and so on. And we'll have that probably described later. Over here, yes. So the 6 super knowledges and 10 Tathagata powers. I see I have it spread out through several slides. So the 10 special knowledges, the knowledge of what is possible and impossible. So the Buddha can clearly understand the causes and what are not the causes for things that happen. The Buddha understands the results of actions, kamma. The Buddha also knows what are the ways how to achieve things, including enlightenment. The Buddha knows the world with its differing elements. We usually recognize 28 different elements, or we could say also 18 elements in a different understanding. But generally, if we take a list of 6 elements that the Buddha himself provided, the world is made of hardness, heaviness, cohesion, temperature, motion, space, and consciousness. So the Buddha said the world is made of these 6 things. There are some teachers who don't accept that, but what can I do about that? This is what the Buddha said. Okay, then we have knowledge of the different inclinations of beings. So different beings have different abilities. For example, Sunakata has ability to get divine eye, but he doesn't have ability to get divine ear. Knowledge of the underlying tendencies and faculties of others. So this would be a lot about the temperament. So some people are more greedy, some are more faithful, some are more angry, some are more intelligent, some are more thinking, daydreaming, some are more deluded. So there are different ways how we can recognize different dispositions, or let's say, different tendencies or temperaments of people. Knowledge of the defilement, cleansing, and emergence regarding the jhanas. So the Buddha can explain what is the hindrance, what is the problem that blocks you from achieving jhana or enlightenment. The Buddha remembers his past lives. The Buddha also can see very clearly why and where people and other living beings are born again. And the Buddha has removed all of his defilements and became the rightly and fully enlightened Buddha. So the Buddha also has 6 direct knowledges. I don't think they are clear here, but 6 direct knowledges are that the Buddha has various psychic powers, like he can walk through walls, he can walk over water, he can disappear and appear somewhere else, he can walk in the air, he can plunge in the earth and emerge somewhere else. The Buddha can make himself small, make himself large. So these are, let's call them element-based psychic powers, because you need to master the 4 elements through your mind to do these things. Then the Buddha has the divine eye, divine ear. He can know what you're thinking about, also called telepathy. He remembers his past lives, and he achieved the ultimate enlightenment. So these are the 6 psychic powers of the Buddha. Additionally, the Buddha is free from fear. And the Buddha is free from fear in 4 ways. Number 1, he is absolutely clear about his awakening. He has no fear that he would not be awakened, that he would not be enlightened. The Buddha has no more fear of defilements because he totally removed them all. The Buddha has no fear of any hindrances, of any blocks, because he has identified and he understands them all. And the Buddha also has no fear of being born again, because he clearly knows that he is fully enlightened. The Buddha also understands how the world works. He knows that there are 4 different kinds of living beings. Namely, there are beings who are born from eggs, like chicken, or like snakes, and many others. Womb-born, some are born from womb, like humans. Some are born from moisture, like, for example, mosquitoes. Some are born spontaneously. They just appear right away, like gods or ghosts. The Buddha also understands that there are 5 different places of living beings. We talked about the 9 different destinations, but here we are talking about 5. So you can really categorize living beings in different ways. We're talking about 7 stations of consciousness and 9 stations of living beings in a past lecture. Now we are talking here about 5 possible destinations. Am I right? I think so. I think they were 9 or 7. Now I don't remember anymore. Anyway, now we have here 5 possible destinations. We have devas, hungry ghosts, humans, animals, hell. But we also talk about these worlds as 31 planes, because that one is very detailed. Okay, now we have a little bit of repetition of what we talked about regarding the Buddha's asceticism. So you see the Buddha to be, not the Buddha to be would stay in the winter outside, in the summer outside as well. And he would try to avoid all kinds of, here we have the fish. This one is a big one. So he would eat small fish, dung, to maintain himself alive. And here is this one. We are almost finished. So we have here a very interesting thing. The Buddha to be was wrong. The Buddha to be was wrong. He was an ascetic. He was torturing himself. So he was wrong. Not only that he was just wrong, by the time he was going to die, he clearly saw that he was wrong. He saw a sign of hell. We see it, yes, it's basically the same 2 slides talking about the same thing. He saw that he will be born in hell. He will be born as a Kalakanchika Peta, or in hell. He saw the signs of hell right before he died. And he was afraid. He saw, so I went through all of this suffering, but now I will be born in hell. Well, who cares about my suffering? I don't want to be born in hell. So he fully rejected that delusion. He fully rejected the idea that his practice was good. He fully accepted that his practice was totally wrong, that he was wrong all that time that he was suffering so much. He decided, he realized that everything he's done was totally in vain, absolutely useless. And only because he completely shattered that delusion and he completely accepted that all of that asceticism was absolutely useless, that itself liberated him, and he was born in heaven. Okay, now a little note about Venerable Sariputta. I see, so that's not the same thing. Okay, so Venerable Sariputta. This one is an interesting psychology note. So now we know Sunakata, he was going around and talking to people, saying that the Buddha didn't achieve enlightenment and that the Buddha is only making a show. He is talking nicely, he looks nice, but he's just saying what he realized by his logical thinking, not really, he's not really liberated. Now, Venerable Sariputta, an important disciple of the Buddha who was especially predominant in wisdom, he also saw Sunakata talking all this nonsense, and he thought, I can actually go to Sunakata and tell him that he's wrong. But Venerable Sariputta saw something that others would not see. What did he see? He saw that Sunakata is just angry. He doesn't really believe what he's saying. He's not really convinced about what he's saying. He's just angry. And so Venerable Sariputta decided that Sunakata is just angry, and if I tell him that he is wrong, he will be angry with me. And if he is angry with me, with a fully enlightened person, namely Sariputta, then that will be even worse for Sunakata, because blaming the Buddha takes you to hell. Blaming Venerable Sariputta also takes you to hell even for a longer time. So Venerable Sariputta didn't tell anything to Sunakata because he knew that after some time the anger will appease, will disappear. Sunakata will achieve peace because he will run out of energy, run out of his enthusiasm to say bad things about the Buddha, and maybe actually turn back to the Buddha and apologize. We don't know what actually happened with Sunakatta after this incident, but we do know that Venerable Sariputta clearly recognized that teaching Sunakatta at that time something was not a good idea, and that Sunakatta will achieve peace himself as the time goes. When you say bad things, or when you think, many Burmese people have that problem, when you think bad things about the Buddha, that is bad for you. Okay? You think, say, or do things that counter the Buddha, the Buddha's teachings, or monks, that is very bad for you. Okay? But now there's the interesting thing. If you can realize that what you were thinking was wrong, or if you know while you are thinking those wrong thoughts that this is wrong, then that actually is good for you. You see, the opposite. You can completely eradicate the consequences. You can completely eradicate the results of your bad thoughts, bad speech, and bad action if they did not really damage anything, if it was only to show your opinion. You can eradicate the consequences of these wrong ideas if you apologize to the Buddha, to the Dhamma, or to monks. If you apologize to the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, so Buddha, that's the teacher, Dhamma, that's the teachings of the Buddha, Sangha, that's the community of monks. If you apologize to them after those wrong thoughts, wrong speech, wrong action, then actually you suffer nothing at all for those things. But of course, the apology must be honest. And that's what the Burmese people do every day. Because Burmese people are really afraid that they thought, said, or did something against the Buddha, Dhamma, or Sangha. So they apologize every day. And we know that as the Ogata recitation. So when the Burmese recite Ogata, 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 Kayakan, Wasikan, Manokan, so they are apologizing for the things that they did by their body, speech, or mind that were not okay, and that were not okay towards the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. And that way they completely eradicate all consequences of those bad actions, speech, and thought against the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. So again, not all bad things can be eradicated by apologizing. If you kill, steal, if you commit adultery, if you tell lies, if you drink alcohol, these things cannot be eradicated. Sorry. That's why we always follow the 5 precepts. I told you during the first or second lecture, I told you that we must follow the 5 precepts always without any exceptions, everywhere, under all conditions. It's extremely important because there's no way how you can get out of the consequences. You will suffer if you break them. So you'd better never break them. We never break 5 precepts because we are wise people. We know that we don't want to suffer. But if you say something that, if you share your thoughts about the Buddha, if you say, you know what, I think the Buddha didn't this or is that, then you can actually apologize to the Buddha, you can apologize to the Dhamma, Sangha, even when they are not present. And you will suffer no consequences for that. But you must be 100% convinced that you are wrong and that now, as you apologize, you're right. We still have 11 minutes. So if you have any questions, now is the time to ask. Sopaka, Huangmuyen. He's asking, respectful greetings, sir. I would like to ask a question about today's lesson on womb-born beings. Is an embryo created through artificial fertilization, but not yet implanted in the mother's womb, considered a human being? If it is discarded, would that be considered murder? That depends on how big, believe it or not, it depends on how big is the embryo. Yeah. Did you expect that answer? It depends on how big is the embryo. So we see in our scriptures explained that if, and this is specifically for monks, but it's about killing, it's the same thing. So if the embryo, but here we call it zygote, if the zygote has achieved the state of kalala, then, and any time later, then destroying it amounts to killing a full-fledged human adult. Yes, if a monk suggests to a lady to go for abortion, and the lady is in her pregnancy stage of kalala, of a very small zygote, I'll explain how exactly it's small, then the monk has committed the same crime as if he took a knife and stabbed an adult and killed the adult. It's exactly the same thing. Encouraging a lady to go for abortion, and the lady really goes for abortion and kills that zygote of that tiny little size. It's exactly the same thing as if that monk, you see, the monk did not kill the zygote, the monk didn't touch it, the monk didn't do anything at all. He just recommended to the lady, or he helped the lady by advice to go for abortion. It's the same thing, exactly the same thing as if he took a knife, stabbed an adult to death. It's exactly the same offense, and the monk cannot be a monk anymore in their life. So from there we see that as soon as the embryo, the zygote comes to that particular size, destroying it is exactly the same thing as destroying full-fledged adult by your own hand. That's why Buddhism is very strictly against abortion. Like, incredibly, no abortion, no way. So how big should that zygote be for it to count as killing a full-fledged adult by your own hand? So that size is described this way. You take a very thin hair of a special kind of cow in India, and you put on that hair I think, I don't remember. I think it's mustard oil. You put on that hair a thin oil, a thin kind of oil, probably mustard oil, but I don't remember now. And think of that tiny, tiny little drop that can still stay on that hair without falling. And that tiny, tiny little drop, which is very barely visible by naked eye, it means no microscope, not at all. If you can see it by your naked eye, and it's very super, super tiny, but you can see it under good lighting with your own eye, healthy eye, then that is what is called kalala. Okay? The thing is that in Buddhism, killing anything that we cannot see with normal eyes, such as bacteria or virus, does not count as killing. And that's the same thing for zygotes. So if the zygote is too small to see it with a naked eye, naked healthy eye under good lighting, then it is not a living being, or it is living being, but it doesn't count as killing if you kill it. As soon as you can see it, even if it is very, very tiny, it's killing. And for humans, that is full-fledged killing of a fully grown adult by your own hand. Even if you encourage somebody, you know what, it's okay for you to actually go there and kill it. That is the same thing as if you go yourself and kill it yourself. So that is my answer. It's very strict. You see, Buddhism is not so strict about homosexuals, totally fine. Sexuality is awesome, but abortion is not awesome. Okay, in Buddhism, this is the interesting thing when we compare it with other religions, such as Christianity, nobody really cares. Homosexuality, sexual desires, whatever, for lay people, no problem at all. But when it comes to killing, it's super, super strict. When it comes to telling lies, it's also very, very strict, much stricter than all other religions. The strictest rule on lying is in Buddhism. Nowhere else. All other religions allow you to tell direct lie in certain cases. All religions. Only Buddhism doesn't allow telling lie ever. Yes, so 5 precepts are pretty strict in Buddhism, and it's necessary to follow them. If you don't follow, you will suffer. So you need to decide whether you want to suffer or not. Always breaking 5 precepts will bring you more suffering than the benefit you got by breaking the 5 precepts. And the more suffering is not like twice or thrice more. No, it's like billion times more. So that's how works karma, how the world works. Okay. In this case of the ascetic, how could he go to the heaven by just accepting that his practices were wrong? Was it just because of the acceptance of his wrongdoing, or because I knew, or he knew, he was wrong and he tried to practice meditation? Not at all. Actually, in Kamma, we recognize the hardship of doing a good thing. So if you are super, super poor, you have basically nothing to give, and you give all of the food you have for that day to someone, even if it is a layperson, we have cases like that. That's a huge thing, and that takes you to heaven, even if you are evil. Okay, the evil will bring you to hell some other time. Likewise, here the ascetic, he had very, very wrong view, and he had so much to be attached to. Can you imagine how a normal human being would be attached to those practices? If you did that for years, let's say for 20, 30 years, suffering like that, and then saying it's totally useless, it's absolutely useless, who can ever say that? This is extremely hard. And it's the hardness of refusing wrong view that that took him to heaven. It's the hardness of doing a good deed that increases the good deed extremely much. So, for example, if you are peaceful and kind to people when they're kind to you, that's a little merit. But if you are peaceful and kind to people who hate you, who cause you a lot of troubles, that's a huge merit. That's why even in a horrible, horrible hardship, we actually employ more enthusiasm and more effort to always follow the 5 precepts and to be kind and to be loving and so on. You talk about the beings who were born spontaneously. They're just deities. They're just beings who are born through their kamma. It's the kamma power that makes them reappear in the other world. And the nature of these worlds, such as the heaven, hell, ghost realm, is that you're born there, full-fledged adult with all the knowledge and ability to live there. You do not need any parents for that. If there are things which the people already said, evang me sutang, to be what the Buddha had said, that I don't agree with, after having taken into consideration all my own limited experiences and knowledge about the topic area, does it mean that I've committed a sin against the Buddha and the Sangha and so on? Evang me sutang was not said that people doesn't mean that people already said it. Okay, that's what Venerable Ananda said. Venerable Ananda said, Evang me sutang. He said it during the first Buddhist council. And he said it because he heard that from the Buddha. Okay, so You have it from the second hand, yes, from Venerable Ananda, but Venerable Ananda was the best of all the Buddha's disciples in memory. There was no better disciple of the Buddha who could remember more than Venerable Ananda. So having Venerable Ananda as the second-hand source is pretty good. And in Theravada Buddhism, we do believe that Venerable Ananda is 100% reliable when he says that he heard something from the Buddha. In other words, evam, thus, me, to me, sutang was heard. Thus have I heard. And if you don't believe something in the scriptures, that's not necessarily a problem. Depends on what it is. If it is about the 10 right views, then that means about the in summary, the consequences of donation. So if you give something, it brings result. If you donate, if you support somebody, that brings you result. The understanding that paying respect to mom and dad is extremely important, the understanding that there are living beings born spontaneously, such as gods, ghosts, and in the hell, the understanding that there is past life and next life, the understanding that the Buddha achieved enlightenment. So these are the 10 right views in brief. So when you have these 10 right views, and there is something else, for example, 28, that there are like 28 elements, and you believe there are not 28 elements, there are 4 elements, then that's not what will take you to hell. Don't worry about that, okay? So we have these 10 right views, and then we have also 4 right views. We have also 4 right views, 4 kinds of right view taught by the Buddha, and that is that there is suffering in the world. The cause of suffering is craving. Without craving, it's possible to achieve. Without craving, there is actually full enlightenment, liberation from suffering, and the path that leads you out of craving and suffering is the Eightfold Noble Path. So these are 4 aspects of the right view related to Four Noble Truths, and they come together with the 10. So the 10 plus 4, we can think of these 14 right views. If your view is contradicting any of these 14 things, then that will take you to hell. If it is unrelated to that, for example, you think that on a tree there are 100 leaves while there are 105 leaves, no, it doesn't matter at all. If your view is, again, related to something else, for example, there are 4 elements and not 28, or for example, there are 6 elements but not 12 because the Buddha, sometimes teaches something else. So you make a selection that actually doesn't matter as well. That will not take you to hell. Yeah, many things in the commentaries are written, and the commentaries provide a lot of explanations which seem to be contradicting what the Buddha said. Again, if you don't believe what's in the commentaries, but you still have these 14 right views that the Buddha explains in Majjhima Nikaya, and I don't remember which sutta exactly. It's not Sammaditthi Sutta, it's a different one. So the Buddha, no, I won't guess. It's in Majjhima Nikaya. So these 14 views, they are the major views. Okay, knowledge about the topic. Does it mean that I've committed a sin against the Buddha and the Sangha involving in the Sangite? Isn't it dictatorship? That's so funny. But if the Burmese people are so strict in obeying the Buddha, why did the... Oh, wow, that's interesting. Rohingya. That's more of a political question. Actually, there were many Burmese people and many Burmese monks who were very strictly against all of the bloodshed. So the idea that the people are strict about obeying the Buddha and therefore they supported violence, that's totally wrong, because you had a large amount, basically all knowledgeable monks were talking against the violence against Rohingya, and this was a very purely political. It was a political, that kind of a kind of fraud, or we could say tactic from the Burmese army who needed to remove the Rohingyas because of what they believe. It was not related to Buddhism, but yes, there were notable monks who were talking against Rohingya, but not necessarily Rohingya. They were talking about Islam. And those monks actually, or the most famous one, ended up in prison. So if the monk could end up in prison at the time when the army was not in power, then that just shows us that the Burmese did not actually agree with the violence and with the views against Islam, especially in the way how they were presented. So, no, this is not related. Okay. Any other questions? We are already 5 minutes over time. So if you have any more questions, please let me know in the WhatsApp group. If you disagree with something that I said, that's totally fine. See, it's totally about the 14 right views. It's not about agreeing with me. Totally, you can disagree with anything I say. Thank you everyone for joining me. Next week, we will have our last lesson for this part of the course. I hope to do several parts. I will explain to you next week that we have actually 4 volumes of the supplementary, and we are covering only 1 volume during these 7 or whatever 6 lectures. We are covering those that are most explained or that are provided with most additional detail in the book. We have 4 volumes and we covered only 1. So that means we'll have probably 3 more parts of the course. We will have like 2-3 months maybe break between the courses, but that's what's the plan. So we have finished the curriculum for this part, and we will be meeting next week to review and to discuss. Next week, I will be encouraging you to turn on your camera and share with us your ideas and thoughts and so on. So I believe this will be an interesting opportunity to really learn about each other here, have something interesting to know about each other, and I will be reviewing in brief what we went through so that your knowledge from the previous lectures stay with you as long as possible. Thank you everyone for your